The night Evelyn Carter discovered her fiancé in bed with her sister, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She pulled out her phone and recorded every word they said, including his plan to murder the city's most feared mafia boss and steal her family's empire. Standing in that dark parking garage, wedding cake samples still in her hands, Evelyn made a choice that would change everything. She would kiss the devil himself to destroy the man who betrayed her. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this tale travels. On. The elevator doors opened to the penthouse floor with a soft chime that seemed too cheerful for what was about to unfold. Evelyn Carter shifted the white bakery box in her arms, balancing 3 different cake samples she'd spent the afternoon selecting. Vanilla bean with raspberry filling, chocolate ganache with salted caramel, classic champagne cake with Italian buttercream. She'd been meticulous about the choices, just as she'd been meticulous about everything else in the wedding planning. After all, when you were marrying into one of the most powerful families in the city, details mattered. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor as she approached Dominic's door. She'd texted him an hour ago that she was coming, but he hadn't responded. That wasn't unusual. Dominic Varela was a busy man, managing the family's extensive real estate holdings and investment portfolios. Or so he claimed. Evelyn used her key, the one he'd given her 3 months ago, with a kiss and a promise that his home was now hers too. The lock turned smoothly, and she pushed the door open, calling out softly. "Dom? I brought the cake samples from Delacroix. The wedding planner needs our decision by tomorrow." Silence answered her. The penthouse stretched before her, all floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture that probably cost more than most people's cars. The city glittered beyond the glass, thousands of lights spreading out like diamonds on black velvet. This view would be hers soon. This life. This carefully constructed future her father had arranged before the cancer took him 6 months ago. Marcus Carter had built an empire from nothing. Legitimate shipping companies that controlled half the Port Authority, warehouses that processed millions in goods, a network of transportation that made him indispensable to businesses both legal and otherwise. And when he lay dying, he'd made Evelyn promise to protect it all. "The Varellas are powerful," he'd whispered, his once strong hands fragile in hers. "Dominic is ambitious, smart. This marriage will secure everything I built. You'll be safe, Evie. The business will be safe." She'd agreed because refusing would have broken his heart in his final days. She'd agreed because at 28 she'd learned that love was a luxury women in her position couldn't always afford. She'd agreed because Dominic had seemed perfect, handsome, charming, attentive in all the right ways. Now, standing in his silent apartment with cake samples growing heavy in her arms, Evelyn felt the first whisper of unease. She set the box down on the kitchen counter and moved deeper into the penthouse. The living room was empty. His office door stood ajar, the room dark beyond it. That left only the bedroom. The unease crystallized into something sharper. Evelyn's father had taught her many things before he died. How to read a balance sheet. How to negotiate with men who thought her gender made her weak. How to recognize when something was wrong, even when everything appeared right. Something was wrong. She should have turned around, should have called out again, given him warning, preserved whatever illusion she was about to shatter. But Evelyn had never been good at lying to herself, and some part of her, the part that had noticed Dominic's increasing distance, his late nights, his phone calls that ended abruptly when she entered the room, already knew what she would find. The bedroom door was closed but not locked. She pushed it open slowly, quietly. The scene that greeted her was almost cliché in its predictability. Dominic's bed, the bed where he'd made love to her, where he'd proposed with her grandmother's ring, where he'd promised her forever, currently contained 2 people. Neither of them had noticed her presence yet. Dominic's back was to the door, his body blocking Evelyn's view of the woman beneath him. But then he shifted, and Evelyn saw blonde hair spilled across the pillow. Familiar blonde hair. The woman laughed, a sound Evelyn had heard her entire life, a sound that had comforted her through skinned knees and broken hearts and their father's funeral. Vanessa, her sister, her younger by 2 years, beautiful, charming sister who had hugged her at the engagement party and offered to be her maid of honor. Evelyn's hand found her phone in her purse. Her fingers moved with mechanical precision, unlocking it, opening the video app, hitting record. She angled it to capture everything, her hand steady even as her heart turned to ice in her chest. She didn't cry. There would be time for tears later, perhaps. Or perhaps not. Perhaps the woman who had agreed to this arranged marriage, who had set aside her own dreams to honor her father's legacy, had always known on some level that love was never part of the bargain. But what came next froze her completely. "When do you tell her?" Vanessa's voice drifted across the room, lazy with satisfaction. Dominic rolled onto his back, pulling Vanessa against his side. "Tell Evelyn? I don't. Why would I?" "Because you're still going through with the wedding." Vanessa traced patterns on his chest. "You're really going to marry my sister while fucking me?" "The wedding isn't about Evelyn," Dominic said, his voice carrying a coldness Evelyn had never heard before. "It's about control of Carter shipping. Your father was smart enough to tie the business up in trusts and stipulations. Evelyn has to marry me, or everything goes to some distant cousin. And once we're married, once I have legal authority over the company, you'll have the port access you need." Vanessa's voice held admiration. "Just like your uncle wanted." "Fuck what my uncle wants." The venom in Dominic's tone made Evelyn's fingers tighten on her phone. "Victor Salazar sits on his throne thinking he controls this city, thinking the Varela family needs to bow to him because he runs the commission. He's a relic, Vanessa, a dinosaur who doesn't understand that the real power isn't in drugs or guns anymore. It's in legitimate business, shipping, transportation, control of the infrastructure." "And once you have Carter shipping?" Vanessa prompted. "Once I have it, I'll have something Victor needs. Every family in this city moves goods through those ports, but they'll move them through me now. I'll make myself indispensable to every operation in the city. And when the time is right, when I've built enough alliances, when I've proven I'm more valuable than that old bastard." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Vanessa laughed. "You're going to kill him. You're going to kill Victor Salazar." "The commission needs new leadership. Someone who understands that we're businessmen, not thugs. Someone who can take us into the future. That someone is me." Dominic's voice carried absolute certainty. "And poor Evelyn will never see it coming. She'll be the dutiful wife, the perfect cover. She's so desperate to honor Daddy's memory, she'll do whatever I say." "And what about me?" Vanessa's voice turned petulant. "Do I have to watch you play happy couple with my sister?" "Just until I consolidate power. Once I control the commission, once Victor's gone, we can do whatever we want. Divorce her, pay her off. I don't care. You'll be by my side where you belong." The recording had been running for 3 minutes. Evelyn had everything she needed. She backed away from the door with the same careful silence she'd used to approach it. Her movements were mechanical, her mind strangely calm. Perhaps this was shock. Perhaps this was simply the moment when every illusion she'd built around this marriage finally shattered, leaving only clarity behind. She made it back to the kitchen, retrieved the cake samples with hands that still didn't shake, and let herself out of the penthouse. The elevator seemed to take forever. She watched the numbers descend, 48, 47, 46, and tried to process what she'd just learned. Her fiancé was cheating on her with her sister. That part hurt, but it was almost secondary to the larger betrayal. Dominic had never wanted her. He'd wanted her father's company. He was marrying her to steal an empire and use it to murder the most dangerous man in the city. The elevator reached the parking garage. Evelyn walked to her car, a sleek black Mercedes that had been her father's, that still smelled faintly of his cologne. She set the cake samples in the passenger seat and then just sat there, staring at the concrete wall in front of her. This was the moment where she should call someone. Her lawyer, perhaps. Or her father's oldest friend, Robert Chen, who tried to advise her on the marriage. Or even the police, though what would she tell them? That her fiancé was planning to commit murder? Based on what evidence? A private conversation she'd recorded without consent? No. The police were useless for people like the Varelas, for people like Victor Salazar. They operated in a world where traditional law didn't reach, where power and violence wrote their own rules. Evelyn pulled out her phone and watched the recording again. Dominic's voice echoed in the quiet car. "Once I have it, I'll have something Victor needs." "You're going to kill Victor Salazar. She'll be the dutiful wife, the perfect cover." She played it 3 times. Then she opened her contacts and scrolled through the names until she found one she'd never expected to use. Victor Salazar. Her father had known him, of course. You couldn't control half the Port Authority without dealing with the man who ran the city's underworld. Marcus Carter had maintained a careful neutrality, processing shipments for multiple families without choosing sides. It had kept him safe, kept his business thriving, kept Evelyn insulated from the darker side of his work. But Marcus had also made sure his daughter knew how to reach certain people, just in case. "If anything ever happens to me," he'd said once, "and you need real help, not the kind lawyers can provide." He'd given her a list of numbers. Victor Salazar's was at the top. Evelyn stared at the contact for a long moment. Then she looked at the white bakery box beside her, at the cake samples she'd carefully selected for a wedding that had never been real. Dominic thought she was weak, naive, so desperate to honor her father's memory that she'd let herself be used. He thought he was playing a game where he knew all the rules and she knew none. He was wrong. Evelyn opened a new message to Victor's number. Her thumbs moved swiftly across the screen. "We need to talk. Your nephew is planning to kill you." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she started her car and drove. Not home to the penthouse apartment her father had left her. Not to Vanessa's place where her sister was probably still tangled in Dominic's sheets. Definitely not back upstairs to confront them both. Instead, she drove to her father's favorite overlook, a spot high in the hills where you could see the entire city spread out below. The port, the shipping yards, the buildings and bridges and rivers of light that represented everything Marcus Carter had built. "I'm sorry, Daddy," she whispered to the empty car. "But I'm not going to protect your empire by marrying a man who wants to use it to commit murder. I'm going to protect it my way." Her phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "Tomorrow night, 10 p.m., the Monarch Club. Come alone." Evelyn recognized the test for what it was. The Monarch Club was Victor Salazar's territory, the private establishment where he conducted business far from prying eyes. Walking in there alone as a woman who'd just accused his nephew of treason took either courage or stupidity. She typed back, "I'll be there." Another message, "Bring proof." Evelyn looked at the video on her phone. 3 minutes of Dominic and Vanessa discussing betrayal and murder. 3 minutes that would either get her killed or give her the power to destroy the man who'd tried to destroy her. "I have it," she replied. The city glittered below her, beautiful and deadly. Somewhere down there, Dominic was probably still in bed with Vanessa, both of them laughing at how easily they'd fooled her, how weak she was, how perfectly she'd played her role. Let them laugh. Let them enjoy these last moments of certainty. Because Evelyn Carter had just learned something important. She'd spent her whole life being the good daughter, the dutiful heir, the perfect bride. She'd shaped herself to fit other people's expectations, made herself smaller to make room for their ambitions. That woman had died tonight in Dominic's penthouse. The woman sitting in this car, watching the city that men like her father and Victor Salazar had built on blood and power, was someone new. Someone who understood that in this world, you either made the rules or became a victim of them. Dominic had made his choice. He'd decided to use her, to treat her like a game piece to be moved around his board. Now she would make hers. Evelyn drove home through streets that seemed different than they had that morning, sharper, more dangerous. She parked in her building's garage and rode the elevator up to her apartment, the one her father had purchased for her when she graduated from college, the one she'd been planning to give up after the wedding. The space welcomed her with familiar silence. Her father's painting hung over the fireplace, the one he'd commissioned of the two of them when she was 16. Before cancer, before Vanessa had started drifting away from the family, chasing modeling contracts and wealthy men, before their mother had moved to Paris to find herself after the divorce. "What would you do?" Evelyn asked the painting. "If you knew the man you'd chosen for me was planning to steal everything you built." But she already knew the answer. Marcus Carter hadn't built an empire by being passive. He'd been ruthless when he needed to be, strategic always, willing to make hard choices for the greater good. She'd inherited his business. Perhaps it was time to inherit his instincts too. Evelyn poured herself 2 fingers of her father's whiskey and sat on the couch, her phone in her hand. She watched the video one more time, studying it with new eyes. Not as a betrayed fiancé, but as someone gathering intelligence. Dominic wanted the Port Authority. He planned to use it against Victor, which meant Victor needed to know, needed to understand the threat before it materialized. But more than that, It meant Evelyn had something Victor wanted: information, warning, evidence. In the world her father had navigated so carefully, information was currency. And Evelyn had just become very, very rich. She pulled up her laptop and began researching everything she could find about Victor Salazar. Most of it was rumor and speculation. The newspapers called him the architect because of his reputation for complex, long-term planning. He'd risen to leadership of the city's organized crime commission through a combination of intelligence and calculated violence. He was in his early 40s, had never married, and by all accounts ran his organization with absolute authority. He was also, according to every source she could find, utterly ruthless with traitors. The thought should have frightened her. Instead, Evelyn felt a strange sense of calm. She was about to walk into a room with one of the most dangerous men in the city and tell him his own nephew was planning his murder. The nephew he'd presumably trusted enough to involve in family business. Most people would call that suicidal. Evelyn called it leverage. She spent the rest of the night planning, not just what she'd say to Victor, but what came after. Because exposing Dominic's plan to his uncle would only solve part of her problem. She'd still lose her father's company unless she went through with the marriage. The trusts and stipulations Marcus had set up were ironclad: marry by her 30th birthday, or control passed to a cousin she'd met twice at family funerals. Her father had meant it as protection, she knew. A guarantee that she'd have a partner, someone to help her navigate the dangerous waters of running a company that dealt with men like Victor Salazar. He'd never imagined she'd need protection from her partner instead. But maybe there was another way, another alliance, another kind of partnership entirely. The idea formed slowly, dangerously, in the quiet hours before dawn. It was reckless, possibly insane, the kind of move that could get her killed or worse. It was also brilliant. When the sun rose over the city, Evelyn had a plan. Not just to survive Dominic's betrayal, but to turn it into something else entirely, something powerful. She showered, dressed in a black suit that had been tailored to perfection, and put on the face of Evelyn Carter, heiress to the Carter shipping empire. Poised, professional, perfectly composed. Then she picked up her phone and sent a message to Dominic. Something came up with the business. Need to postpone our dinner tonight. Tomorrow instead? His response came quickly. No problem, babe. Tomorrow works. Miss you. The ease of his lie was almost impressive. While he was texting her sweet nothings, Vanessa was probably still asleep in his bed. Evelyn sent similar messages to the wedding planner, to her assistant, to everyone who might wonder why she'd suddenly gone silent on the endless details of planning a ceremony that would never happen. She was buying time, creating space to maneuver. The day passed in a blur of meetings and phone calls. She had her father's company to run, after all, and regardless of what happened with Dominic, the ship still needed to dock, the cargo still needed to move. She negotiated contracts, reviewed financial reports, and projected the image of a woman completely in control. Inside, she counted down the hours until 10 p.m. At 9 o'clock, Evelyn changed into a different outfit, still elegant, but simpler. A black dress that was sophisticated without being flashy, heels that could be weapons if necessary. She pulled her dark hair back into a sleek ponytail and studied herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was a stranger, or perhaps she'd always been there, waiting beneath the surface of the dutiful daughter and compliant fiancé, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Here we go, Evelyn whispered to her reflection. She drove to the Monarch Club through streets that had mostly emptied, the city settling into its nighttime rhythms. The club occupied an unmarked building in the financial district, the kind of place you only knew about if you were supposed to know about it. Evelyn pulled up to the valet stand at exactly 10 p.m. A young man in a black suit appeared at her window, his eyes quickly assessing her car, her clothes, her face. Name? He asked. Evelyn Carter. I have a meeting with Mr. Salazar. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. He spoke briefly into a radio, then nodded. Park at the end of the block. Someone will meet you at the entrance. She followed his directions, her heart rate finally beginning to climb. This was real. She was actually doing this. The entrance to the Monarch Club was a simple black door with no sign, no indication of what lay beyond. As Evelyn approached, it opened, revealing a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and an earpiece. Miss Carter, this way, please. The woman led her through a dimly lit hallway that opened into an unexpectedly beautiful space. The club's main room was all dark wood and leather, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over intimate seating areas. A jazz trio played softly in one corner. Well-dressed men and women sat at tables, drinks in hand, conducting quiet conversations. It looked like any high-end establishment, except Evelyn recognized several faces from the news: politicians, business leaders, people who officially had nothing to do with organized crime, but somehow always seemed to be around when power shifted hands. The woman guided her past the main room to a private elevator. They rode up in silence, Evelyn's reflection watching her from the polished brass doors. Still composed, still calm, still showing none of the adrenaline racing through her veins. The elevator opened onto a penthouse level that made Dominic's apartment look like a studio. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city from what had to be the 40th floor. The furniture was both elegant and comfortable, the art on the walls worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. And standing at the window, looking out over the city he controlled, was Victor Salazar. He turned as she entered, and Evelyn got her first real look at the man her fiancé planned to murder. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with the kind of presence that filled a room without effort, dark hair silvered at the temples, eyes that were almost black in the dim light, studying her with an intensity that should have made her nervous. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit with no tie, the top button of his white shirt undone. He looked like exactly what he was, a man who had built an empire on intelligence and violence, who commanded absolute loyalty, who had survived decades in a world where most men died young. "Ms. Carter," he said, his voice deep and measured, "you've made a serious accusation." "Yes," Evelyn said simply, "and I can prove it." Victor gestured to the leather sofa facing the windows. "Sit. Show me what you have." Evelyn remained standing. "First, I need to understand something. If what I'm about to show you is true, what happens to Dominic?" A slight smile touched Victor's lips. Not warm, but appreciative. "You're negotiating before you've shown your cards. Smart, but premature. Show me the proof, then we'll discuss consequences." "No." The word came out stronger than Evelyn expected. "I didn't come here to be another person following your orders, Mr. Salazar. I came here because we have a mutual problem, and I'm offering a solution, but I need to know what I'm walking into." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Victor's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. A predator recognizing unexpected resistance from prey. "You understand who you're talking to?" His voice remained calm, which was somehow more threatening than anger would have been. "Yes, I understand perfectly." Evelyn met his gaze without flinching. "You're the man who runs this city's underworld. You're also the man my fiancé plans to betray and murder, which makes you someone who needs what I have more than I need your approval." The silence stretched between them. Then Victor laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face completely. "Your father raised a lioness." He moved to a cabinet and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. "Marcus always said you had steel in your spine. I didn't believe him. Most people who grow up wealthy and protected never develop real strength." He handed her 1 glass. "I apologize for underestimating you." Evelyn accepted the drink, but didn't sip it yet. "And Dominic?" "If your proof is legitimate, my nephew will face judgment from the Commission, the ruling body of the 5 families that control this city's interests." Victor settled into a chair across from her. "Treason carries specific penalties. Death, usually, or exile if I'm feeling merciful. And my father's company?" "Ah." Victor's eyes glinted with understanding. "The real question. You're supposed to marry Dominic to maintain control of Carter Shipping. If he's dead or exiled, the marriage obviously can't happen, which means everything goes to a cousin who will probably run it into the ground within a year." Evelyn finally sat, crossing her legs. "My father built that company over 30 years. It employs 3,000 people. I won't let it be destroyed because Dominic decided to play kingmaker." "So what exactly are you proposing, Ms. Carter?" Evelyn pulled out her phone, queued up the video, and set it on the coffee table between them. "Watch this first, then we'll talk about proposals." She watched Victor's face as the recording played. Dominic's voice filled the quiet room, confessing everything: the affair with Vanessa, the plan to use the marriage for control of the shipping company, the intention to murder Victor, and seize leadership of the commission. Victor's expression never changed. He could have been watching a weather report for all the emotion he showed, but his hands tightened almost imperceptibly on the arms of his chair when Dominic said, "I'll make myself indispensable to every operation in the city. And when the time is right, when I've built enough alliances, when I've proven I'm more valuable than that old bastard." When the video ended, Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up his glass and drained it. "How long ago did you record this?" "Last night. I went to his penthouse to bring cake samples for the wedding." Evelyn's voice remained steady. "Found him with my sister instead." "And your first instinct was to gather evidence rather than confront him. Interesting choice." Victor refilled his glass. "Most people would have led with emotion." "Emotion doesn't solve problems, strategy does." Evelyn finally tasted her drink, expensive scotch that burned warm down her throat. "Besides, the affair was almost irrelevant once I heard the rest." "Almost?" "It hurt," Evelyn admitted. "I won't pretend it didn't. But I agreed to marry Dominic for business reasons, not love. The betrayal I can survive. The attempt to steal my father's legacy and use it to commit murder? That requires a response." Victor studied her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "You still haven't told me what you want." "I want my company protected. I want Dominic stopped. And I want to make sure no one else tries to use me as a pawn in their power games." Evelyn leaned forward. "You need to eliminate a threat. I need to secure my inheritance. I think we can help each other." "How?" This was the moment. The insane, reckless, potentially brilliant idea she'd conceived in the hours before dawn. Evelyn took a breath and committed. "The commission gathering next week. The one where all 5 families meet to discuss city business. I want you to bring me as your guest." Victor's eyebrows rose. "That's not how these things work. The commission doesn't allow outsiders." "I'm not an outsider. I control half the port authority in this city. Or I will, once I'm married. Every family at that table moves goods through my docks." Evelyn held his gaze. "But more importantly, I want Dominic to see me there. With you. I want him to understand that I know everything." "You want to publicly humiliate my nephew at a commission meeting?" Victor's tone was unreadable. "I want to publicly align myself with you, to make it clear that any move against you is a move against Carter's shipping." Evelyn set down her glass. "Dominic's plan only works if he can use my company to build alliances. If I'm already allied with you, his entire strategy collapses." "And how exactly do you propose to make this alliance visible?" Evelyn stood and walked to the window, looking out over the glittering city. She could see the port from here, the shipping yards her father had built, the cranes and warehouses that represented everything she was fighting to protect. Behind her, she felt Victor's attention like a physical weight. "In your world, symbols matter," she said quietly. "Power matters. Respect matters. You need to show the other families that Dominic isn't just a traitor. He's weak, that he couldn't even control his own fiancé." "And how do we show that?" Evelyn turned to face him. "When I walk into that commission meeting, I don't sit beside Dominic. I sit beside you. Better yet," she paused, her heart hammering, "I sit on your lap. I kiss you in front of everyone. I make it absolutely clear whose side I'm on." The suggestion hung in the air between them. Victor's expression revealed nothing, but she saw something flicker in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or calculation. "You understand what that would mean," he said slowly. "In that room, in front of those men, such a display would be a declaration, not just of alliance, but of possession. They would assume you're mine." "Let them assume." Evelyn's voice didn't waver. "Let Dominic assume. Let every person at that table understand that I'm not some naive girl to be manipulated. I'm a woman who makes her own choices and picks her own allies." Victor stood and crossed to where she stood by the window. Up close, he was even more imposing, tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes, broad-shouldered, radiating the kind of controlled power that came from years of absolute authority. "This is a dangerous game you're proposing, Evelyn." He used her first name deliberately, testing boundaries. "Once you step into my world publicly, there's no stepping back. The other families will see you as part of my organization. Dominic's enemies will become your enemies. His allies will know you betrayed him." "I'm already in danger," Evelyn countered. "Dominic was going to marry me, use me, and probably dispose of me once I'd served my purpose. My sister has already proven I can't trust family. I have no allies, no protection, and a company full of employees depending on me to keep their jobs safe. This game you're talking about? I'm already playing it. I'm just choosing to play it well." A slow smile spread across Victor's face, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "Your father used to say you were too smart for your own good. He worried it would get you hurt. My father also taught me that power respects power, and right now you're the most powerful man in this city." Evelyn didn't look away from his intense gaze. "So I'm asking you directly, will you accept my alliance? On what terms?" "Publicly, we present as partners. I bring you legitimacy through Carter shipping, access to port operations without the complications of ownership. You bring me protection, connections, the backing of your organization." Evelyn ticked off points on her fingers. "Privately, we work together to dismantle Dominic's plans and expose him to the Commission. Once he's dealt with, we reassess." "And the physical aspect of this performance you're suggesting?" Heat crept up Evelyn's neck, but she refused to show embarrassment. "Whatever's necessary to sell the illusion. A kiss at the Commission meeting, appearing together at events, making it believable that I chose you over Dominic." Victor moved closer, near enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. "You're asking me to pretend to be your lover in front of the most dangerous men in this city. Men who will look for any weakness to exploit. Do you understand what that means? The attention it will bring? The assumptions people will make?" "Yes." Evelyn's voice remained steady despite her racing pulse. "I understand perfectly. I'm also willing to accept those consequences if it means protecting what my father built." For a long moment, Victor simply looked at her. Then he extended his hand. "You have a deal, Evelyn Carter. But understand this. Once we shake on it, you're under my protection. Which means you follow my lead in situations you don't understand. You trust my judgment in matters of security. And you don't make unilateral decisions that could endanger either of us. Agreed?" Evelyn clasped his hand. His grip was firm, warm, completely confident. "Agreed. But the same goes for you. Decisions affecting Carter shipping go through me. I won't have my company used without my knowledge or consent." "Fair enough." Victor's smile widened. "I think we're going to work well together." He released her hand and moved to his desk, pulling out his phone. "The Commission meets in 4 days. That gives us time to prepare. First order of business, you need to maintain appearances with Dominic. Don't let him know anything has changed." "I've already texted him that everything's fine. We have dinner planned for tomorrow night." The thought of sitting across from Dominic, smiling and pretending, made her stomach turn. But Evelyn had committed to this path. She would see it through. "Good. At dinner, I want you to mention that you're concerned about port security. Tell him you've been approached about attending a shipping industry meeting at the Monarch Club." Victor typed rapidly on his phone. "Make it sound boring, technical. He won't question it." "Because it gives me a reason to be here," Evelyn realized. "When he finds out later, there's a legitimate explanation for why I was at your club." "Exactly. We build the narrative carefully." Victor glanced up from his phone. "I'm sending you an encrypted messaging app. Download it when you get home. That's how we'll communicate going forward. Delete our text exchange from tonight." Evelyn nodded, watching as her phone buzzed with the download link. "What about my sister? Vanessa knows about the affair. She might warn Dominic. Is she loyal to him?" "I don't know." Evelyn's voice went cold. "I thought I knew my sister. Apparently I was wrong about that too." Family loyalty is complicated. Victor's tone held unexpected sympathy. "Dominic is my nephew, my brother's son. I brought him into the business, taught him everything I know, and now he wants me dead. So trust me when I say I understand betrayal by blood." The shared pain of it created an unexpected moment of connection. They stood in silence, two people who'd been betrayed by those they should have been able to trust. "Does it get easier?" Evelyn asked quietly. "Knowing that people you love are willing to destroy you?" "No," Victor said honestly, "but you learn to use it. Anger, hurt, betrayal, they're all fuel. The question is whether you let them consume you or whether you channel them into something productive." "And which did you choose?" "I built an empire." Victor's smile was sharp. "I think that answers your question." Evelyn's phone buzzed again. A message in the encrypted app. Instructions for their next meeting, details about the commission gathering, a list of names she should familiarize herself with. Victor was already moving forward, planning, strategizing. One more thing, he said as she prepared to leave. The kiss at the commission meeting. It needs to be convincing. These men have seen everything, faked everything. They'll know immediately if it's an act. Evelyn felt her pulse jump. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we practice. Make sure when the moment comes there's no hesitation, no awkwardness. Victor moved closer again, giving her space to retreat if she chose. Unless you're not as committed to this plan as you claimed. It was a challenge and a test. Evelyn recognized it for what it was. Victor needed to know if she could follow through, if she had the nerve to do what she'd proposed. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Practice then. Victor's hand came up to cup her jaw, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. The touch was surprisingly gentle for a man with his reputation. You're certain about this. Once we cross this line, even in performance, it changes things. I'm certain. Evelyn's voice didn't waver. Show me how to make it convincing. He leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When his lips met hers, the kiss was nothing like what Evelyn had expected. Not aggressive or demanding, but confident, controlled, with an intensity that sent heat through her entire body. She responded instinctively, her hand coming up to rest against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong beneath the expensive fabric of his shirt. The kiss deepened, becoming something more than practice, more than performance. When Victor finally pulled back, his eyes had darkened. That'll work? Evelyn's breath came faster than she wanted to admit. Yes, I think it will. The moment stretched between them, charged with an energy she hadn't anticipated. Then Victor stepped back, his professional mask sliding into place. Go home. Get some rest. Tomorrow, have dinner with Dominic and play your part perfectly. The day after, we'll meet again to finalize details for the commission gathering. He handed her a business card with nothing but a phone number printed on it. If anything happens, if Dominic suspects anything, call this number immediately. Someone will be with you within minutes. You're assigning me protection? Starting tonight. You won't see them, but they'll be there. Non-negotiable, Victor added when she opened her mouth to protest. You're under my protection now, Evelyn. That means keeping you safe whether you like it or not. Something warm unfurled in Evelyn's chest. Gratitude, maybe, or relief. For the first time since watching that video of Dominic and Vanessa, she didn't feel completely alone. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me yet. This is about to get very complicated. Victor walked her to the elevator. But I'll say this, you're handling it better than most people would. Your father would be proud. The elevator doors opened. Evelyn stepped inside, then turned back to face him. Victor, why did you agree to this? You could have just dealt with Dominic quietly, eliminated the threat without involving me. Victor leaned against the doorframe, considering the question. Because you're right, power respects power. And you walked into my club alone, with nothing but evidence and audacity, and proposed an alliance like you had every right to. That takes a particular kind of courage. His smile was almost admiring. Also, anyone who can turn a betrayal into a strategic opportunity is someone I want on my side, not working against me. The elevator doors began to close. Evelyn caught one last glimpse of Victor watching her with those unreadable dark eyes before the car descended. The woman who'd arrived at the Monarch Club an hour ago had been desperate, angry, determined. The woman riding down in the elevator had gained something she hadn't expected, an ally who might actually be her equal. The ride home passed in a blur. Evelyn parked in her building's garage and walked to the elevator, her mind still processing everything that had happened. She'd kissed Victor Salazar. She'd made a deal with the most dangerous man in the city. She'd committed to a performance that would publicly humiliate her fiancé and align her with organized crime. Her father would have been horrified, or would he? Marcus Carter had navigated this world for decades, maintained relationships with people like Victor while keeping his hands technically clean. Maybe he would have understood. Maybe he would have done the same thing in her position. Evelyn's phone buzzed as she entered her apartment, a message from Dominic in their regular text thread. Miss you, baby. Can't wait for tomorrow night. Should I make reservations at Terrace? The casual endearment made her skin crawl. Less than 24 hours ago, he'd been in bed with her sister, plotting to use Evelyn for his own ambitions. Now he was sending sweet messages like nothing had happened. She forced herself to respond normally. Terrace sounds perfect. 7:30? It's a date. Love you. Evelyn stared at those two words. Did Dominic even understand what love was? Or was it just another tool in his manipulation toolkit, words deployed to keep her compliant? She deleted the message thread as Victor had instructed, then downloaded the encrypted app. Within seconds, a new message appeared from a contact labeled simply V. Home safe? Evelyn typed back, yes. Tomorrow night with Dominic. I'll mention the shipping security meeting. Good. Remember, you're just a concerned business owner trying to network. Nothing suspicious? Understood. Get some sleep, Evelyn. You'll need your energy. She set down her phone and moved to the window, looking out over the city. Somewhere out there, Dominic was probably still with Vanessa, completely unaware that his entire plan had just imploded. That the woman he'd dismissed as weak and naive had just allied herself with the one person who could destroy him. The thought brought a fierce satisfaction. Evelyn showered and climbed into bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Dominic and Vanessa together, heard his voice describing how he'd use her, felt Victor's lips on hers, the unexpected intensity of that kiss. She'd crossed a line tonight, stepped into a world her father had kept her sheltered from, made deals with dangerous men, agreed to perform an intimacy she wasn't sure was entirely performance anymore. But she'd also taken control. For the first time in months, maybe years, Evelyn Carter was making her own choices, playing her own game, writing her own rules. And if that meant kissing the devil to destroy the man who'd betrayed her, so be it. Her phone buzzed one final time. Another message from V. For what it's worth, you impressed me tonight. Not many people can do that. Evelyn smiled in the darkness and typed back, Good. I'd hate to be boring, trust me. Boring is the last word anyone would use to describe you. She fell asleep with her phone in her hand, dreaming of commission meetings and power plays and dark eyes that saw more than they revealed. The next day passed in careful performance. Evelyn went to the Carter shipping offices and conducted business as usual. She reviewed contracts, met with department heads, and projected absolute normalcy. But underneath, she was gathering information, learning exactly which shipments moved through her ports for which families, understanding the full scope of her company's connections to the city's underworld. Knowledge was power. And if she was going to be Victor's ally, she needed to understand exactly what she was bringing to the table. Her assistant knocked on her door at noon. Miss Carter, there's someone here to see you. A Mr. Chen? Robert Chen, her father's oldest friend and the company's general counsel. Evelyn's stomach tightened. Had he somehow found out about last night? Send him in. Chen entered looking grave, his silver hair immaculate as always. He'd been present at every major moment of Evelyn's life. Birthdays, graduations, her father's funeral. Seeing him reminded her sharply of everything she was risking. Evelyn? He took the seat across from her desk without waiting for an invitation. We need to talk about the Varela marriage. Her heart rate spiked, but she kept her expression neutral. What about it? I've heard concerning rumors. Nothing concrete, but enough to worry me. Chen leaned forward. Your father trusted Dominic, but your father also taught you to verify everything. Have you actually investigated the man you're about to marry? It was almost funny. If Chen only knew what she'd discovered. I appreciate your concern, Robert, but everything is fine with Dominic. The lie came easier than it should have. Is it? Chen's eyes searched her face. Because you look exhausted. And I know that expression. It's the same one your father wore when he was dealing with something he couldn't tell me about. Evelyn considered him carefully. Chen had been Marcus's consigliere in everything but name. The man who'd helped structure the legal framework that kept Carter shipping operating in gray areas without crossing into obvious illegality. He'd know more about the city's power dynamics than almost anyone. Robert, hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to make an alliance with one of the 5 families, how would they do it? Chen went very still. Hypothetically? Hypothetically. They'd be very careful, Chen said slowly, because alliances in that world aren't business contracts. They're bonds enforced by reputation and violence. Once you're allied with one family, the others see you as committed. It affects every aspect of your operation. But it would provide protection, guarantee that no one could simply take what's yours. At a cost. Chen's voice sharpened. Evelyn, what's going on? This doesn't sound hypothetical. She wanted to tell him, wanted to share the burden of what she'd discovered, what she was planning. But Victor's words echoed in her mind. This performance required absolute commitment. The moment anyone suspected she was working with Victor, Dominic might escalate his timeline. Nothing's going on. I'm just trying to understand the landscape better. Evelyn forced a smile. Dad navigated these waters for years. I need to learn how. Chen didn't look convinced, but he let it go. Your father managed it by maintaining strict neutrality. He served every family equally, took no sides, made no exclusive deals. It kept him safe, but limited his power. And if someone wanted more power, wanted to stop being a neutral party and actually shape how things work, then they'd need a very powerful ally and a very good reason. Chen stood. Evelyn, whatever you're considering, please be careful. Your father built this company to provide for you, not to be a weapon in someone else's war. After he left, Evelyn sat in the quiet office, staring at her father's photograph on the desk. Marcus Carter smiled back at her, confident and strong in the picture taken 10 years ago, before cancer had started eating him alive. I'm being careful, Dad, she whispered. I'm just being careful in a different way than you were. At 6 o'clock, she went home to change for dinner with Dominic. The black dress she selected was one of his favorites. Elegant, understated, expensive. She styled her hair the way he preferred, wore the perfume he'd given her for her birthday. She looked like the perfect fiancé, the compliant woman he expected, the woman who didn't exist anymore. Dominic was waiting at terrace when she arrived, looking handsome in a tailored navy suit. He stood and kissed her cheek, and Evelyn had to suppress the urge to flinch. You look beautiful, he said warmly. I missed you. Missed you too. The lie tasted like ash. They ordered wine, made small talk about the wedding planning, discussed the guest list. Dominic played his part perfectly. The attentive fiancé, the man who couldn't wait to marry her. If Evelyn hadn't seen the video, hadn't heard his cold calculation as he discussed using her, she might have believed it. How's work? Dominic asked, cutting into his steak. Any interesting developments? This was her opening. Evelyn took a sip of wine and sighed. Actually, yes. Something concerning came up. We've had some security issues at the port. Nothing major yet, but enough that I'm worried about vulnerabilities in our systems. What kind of security issues? Unauthorized access attempts. Some questions about how we're tracking shipments. The security firm I consulted recommended I attend an industry meeting at the Monarch Club next week. Apparently it's where shipping companies discuss best practices for protecting high-value cargo. She watched Dominic carefully, but his expression showed only polite interest. The Monarch Club? That's Victor's place, isn't it? Is it? I didn't realize. Evelyn's performance was flawless. The security firm just said it's where these meetings happen. Should I not go? No, it's fine. Your Uncle Victor likes to keep his fingers in all sorts of legitimate businesses. Makes sense he'd host industry events. Dominic reached across the table to squeeze her hand. I'm glad you're taking port security seriously. That's important. He had no idea. Absolutely no suspicion that she'd already met with Victor, already made her alliance, already set in motion his destruction. The rest of dinner passed in pleasant conversation. Dominic told her about his day, asked about wedding details, discussed their honeymoon plans. He was charming, attentive, everything a fiancé could want. Everything except honest. When he drove her home and kissed her goodnight, Evelyn let him, playing her part until his car disappeared around the corner. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. Back in her apartment, she messaged Victor, dinner complete. He bought the Monarch Club story completely. No suspicion. The response came quickly. Perfect. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., same location. We finalized the commission strategy. Evelyn poured herself a glass of wine and stood at the window. 3 more days until the commission meeting. 3 more days of pretending with Dominic, of maintaining this careful performance, of living between 2 worlds. Then everything would change. She woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through her windows and the hollow feeling that came with living a double life. Her phone showed 3 messages from Dominic, good morning texts, a photo of the sunset from his office, another declaration of love that meant nothing. Evelyn deleted them without responding and checked the encrypted app instead. Victor had sent a detailed briefing on the 5 families that comprised the commission. The Salazars, of course, with Victor at the head. The Morenos, who controlled the West Side gambling operations. The Khans, who'd built their empire on construction and real estate development. The Russos, old money crime that had been in the city for 3 generations. And the Torres family, relative newcomers who'd risen fast through tech sector investments and cryptocurrency schemes. Each family had representatives, histories, allegiances, and feuds that went back decades. Evelyn absorbed it all, committing names and faces to memory. If she was going to walk into that room, she needed to understand exactly who she was dealing with. At 1 o'clock, she left the office early, citing a headache. Her assistant looked concerned but didn't question it. Evelyn had built up enough goodwill over the years that an afternoon off raised no suspicions. The drive to the Monarch Club felt different in daylight. The building looked almost ordinary, just another renovated warehouse in the financial district. But Evelyn knew what lay inside now, the elegant facade that concealed ruthless power. The same woman from before met her at the entrance. "Miss Carter, Mr. Salazar is expecting you." This time, they didn't go to the penthouse. Instead, Evelyn was led through a different corridor to a private conference room. Victor stood at a large table covered in photographs and documents, his jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up. He looked up when she entered. "Evelyn, good. We have a lot to cover." He gestured to the materials spread before him. "These are dossiers on every person who will be in that room tomorrow night. You need to know who they are, what they want, and how they'll react." She moved to the table, studying the faces. Hard men, most of them, with eyes that had seen violence and ordered more. A few women scattered among them, wives, daughters, sisters who'd earned their place through blood or brilliance. "Tomorrow night?" Evelyn looked up sharply. "I thought the commission met in 4 days." "Change of plans. Dominic requested an emergency session." Victor's expression darkened. "Apparently he has important business to discuss with the families, which means he's accelerating his timeline." A chill ran down Evelyn's spine. "He knows something." "No. If he knew about our alliance, he'd have gone to ground already. This is something else." Victor pulled up a photograph of Dominic speaking with an older man Evelyn didn't recognize. "Our surveillance caught him meeting with Antonio Moreno yesterday. Whatever he's planning, he's building support. So we're out of time. We adapt." Victor's voice remained calm, controlled. "The performance happens tomorrow instead. Can you be ready?" Evelyn thought about Dominic's messages this morning, his easy lies, the casual way he'd kissed her last night while planning to use her. "Yes, I can be ready." "Good, because this is going to be more challenging than we anticipated." Victor moved to a seating chart. "Normally, you'd enter with Dominic, sit beside him during proceedings, but I need you to arrive separately after the session has started. It creates more impact." "Walking in alone? Won't that look strange?" "You're not walking in alone. You're walking in late, looking for your fiancé, appearing apologetic for the disruption." Victor's smile was sharp. "And then, instead of going to Dominic, you come to me. The shock value will be significant." Evelyn studied the chart, visualizing it. A room full of dangerous men, all watching as she publicly rejected Dominic for Victor. The humiliation would be absolute, the message unmistakable. "He'll be furious," she said quietly. "He'll be destroyed. There's a difference." Victor met her eyes. "In that world, respect is everything. The moment you choose me over him in front of the commission, Dominic loses all credibility. Anything he says afterward will sound like the complaints of a man who couldn't even control his own fiancée. And then we show them the video." "Then I show them the video," Victor corrected. "You'll already have done your part. The revelation that he's been planning treason becomes my moment, not yours. It keeps you slightly removed from the violence that follows." Evelyn nodded, appreciating his strategic thinking. "What do I wear?" The question seemed to surprise him. Then Victor smiled. "Something that makes a statement. You're not a supplicant seeking favor. You're a woman claiming her power." They spent the next 2 hours reviewing every detail. Where Evelyn would stand, how she'd move through the room, what she'd say if questioned. Victor coached her on body language, on the subtle signals that conveyed confidence versus submission in his world. "When you approach me," he instructed, "don't ask permission. Don't hesitate. Act like you have every right to be there, because you do. These men respect strength. Show them yours." And the kiss? Victor moved closer, his presence filling her awareness. The kiss needs to communicate ownership without desperation, confidence without arrogance. Can you do that? With you? Yes. The words came out more honestly than Evelyn intended. Something flickered in Victor's expression. You're not afraid of me anymore. Should I be? Most people are. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with surprising gentleness. But you never really were you? Even that first night you walked into my club like you owned it. Fear is useful sometimes, Evelyn said, but it's also limiting. You're dangerous, Victor, but you're also the only person in this city who's been completely honest with me. Honest? He laughed. I run a criminal organization, Evelyn. I've killed people, ordered deaths, built an empire on violence and intimidation. I know, but you've never pretended to be something you're not. Dominic lied about loving me. Vanessa lied about being my sister. You've been exactly what you claimed to be from the beginning, a dangerous ally offering a dangerous alliance. She held his gaze. I can work with honest danger. It's the dishonest kind that destroys you. Victor studied her for a long moment. Then he stepped back, professional distance reasserting itself. We should practice the entrance. I want your movements to be natural tomorrow, not rehearsed. They spent another hour running through the scenario. Evelyn walking into the room, scanning for Dominic, her expression shifting from apologetic to determined as she changed direction toward Victor. The approach, the moment of contact, the kiss that would signal everything. Each time they practiced, it felt more real, less like performance and more like something else entirely. Finally, Victor called a break. That's enough. You've got it. Tomorrow, just remember, confidence, not hesitation. You belong in that room as much as anyone. Evelyn sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had sustained her through planning was fading, leaving behind the weight of what she was about to do. Second thoughts? Victor asked, watching her carefully. No, just processing. She looked up at him. Tomorrow night, everything changes. There's no going back after this. No, Victor agreed. There isn't. So I'll ask you one final time. Are you certain this is what you want? Because once you walk into that room, once you make this choice publicly, you're committed. To the alliance, to the consequences. To me. The last two words hung in the air between them, heavier than they should have been. Evelyn stood, crossing to where Victor waited. I'm certain Dominic made his choice when he decided to use me. Vanessa made hers when she climbed into his bed. Now I'm making mine, and I choose power over pretense, alliance over betrayal. She paused. I choose you over him. Victor's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Then tomorrow, we show them exactly what that choice means. He kissed her then, and there was nothing rehearsed about it. This wasn't practice for an audience. This was real, intense, a claiming that had nothing to do with performance and everything to do with the dangerous chemistry that had been building between them since that first night. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor's eyes had darkened with something that looked like hunger. Tomorrow, he said roughly. After the commission, after Dominic is dealt with, you and I are going to have a very serious conversation about what this alliance actually means. Evelyn's pulse raced. Looking forward to it. She left the Monarch Club with her head spinning and her body humming with anticipation. The sun was setting as she drove home, painting the city in shades of gold and crimson. Tomorrow night, she would walk into a room full of criminals and claim her place among them. Tomorrow night, she would destroy the man who tried to use her and align herself publicly with the most dangerous person in the city. Tomorrow night, everything would change. Her phone rang as she pulled into her parking garage. Dominic's name flashed on the screen. For a moment, Evelyn considered not answering. Then she remembered her role, her performance, and accepted the call. Hey, she said, injecting warmth into her voice. Hey, beautiful. Just wanted to hear your voice. Dominic sounded relaxed, happy. I have something to tell you. Remember how I mentioned potentially expanding the business with my uncle? Well, I'm presenting a proposal to the family tomorrow night. It's a big deal, could really change things for us. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so dark. Dominic calling to share his excitement about the meeting where Evelyn would destroy him. That's wonderful, she managed. I'm proud of you. Thanks, babe. It means a lot. This could be the start of something really significant for both of us. His voice dropped. I know this marriage started as a business arrangement, but I want you to know I'm glad it's you. I really am. Evelyn closed her eyes against the wave of anger. Even now, even knowing what she knew, he could lie so smoothly. I'm glad too, she forced out. Good luck tomorrow night. Thanks. Love you. She ended the call without responding and sat in the darkened car, hands gripping the steering wheel. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Evelyn went through the motions at work, signed documents, attended meetings, smiled at employees who had no idea their boss was about to publicly align with organized crime. Every hour felt like 10. Every minute an eternity. At 4 o'clock, she left the office and went home to prepare. The dress she'd chosen was perfect. Deep emerald silk that hugged her curves and fell to mid-thigh. Elegant but powerful. Expensive but not ostentatious. She paired it with black heels that added 3 inches to her height and made her legs look endless. Her makeup was more dramatic than usual, smoky eyes, dark lips, the kind of look that commanded attention. She wore her hair down, loose waves that fell past her shoulders. The overall effect was stunning, dangerous, nothing like the understated elegance Dominic preferred. This woman wasn't anyone's dutiful fiancé. This woman was a queen claiming her throne. At 8:30, Evelyn's phone buzzed. A message from Victor in the encrypted app. Cars waiting downstairs. Driver knows where to take you. Remember, confidence, not hesitation. You've got this. She took one last look in the mirror, grabbed her clutch, and headed down to the waiting town car. The driver nodded respectfully but didn't speak as he navigated through evening traffic toward the Monarch Club. Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The moment that would define everything that came after. The choice that couldn't be undone. She thought about her father, about the empire he'd built, about his dying wish that she'd be safe. Marcus Carter had meant well, but his vision of safety had nearly destroyed her. Real safety didn't come from arranged marriages to men who saw you as a tool. Real safety came from power, from alliances built on mutual respect rather than manipulation. Real safety came from being someone no one dared to betray. The car pulled up to the Monarch Club at exactly 9 o'clock. The driver opened her door, and Evelyn stepped out into the cool evening air. Music and conversation drifted from inside. The commission was already in session. Perfect. She walked through the entrance head high, every inch of her radiating the confidence Victor had coached her to project. The woman at the door's eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing, just gestured toward the private elevator. Evelyn rode up alone, watching her reflection in the polished brass doors. The woman looking back at her was a stranger, powerful, dangerous, ready. The elevator opened directly into a large room she hadn't seen before. At least 40 people filled the space, men in expensive suits, a few women dressed to kill, all of them radiating the particular brand of danger that came with real power. Conversation stopped as heads turned toward the unexpected arrival. Evelyn scanned the room quickly, her training from Victor kicking in automatically. There, at the center table, Dominic sat beside an older man who could only be Antonio Moreno. Her fiancé looked shocked to see her, confusion flickering across his face. And there, across the room at the head table, Victor sat watching her with those dark, intense eyes. He showed no surprise at her arrival, just a slight nod that communicated everything she needed to know. Now. Do it now. Evelyn took a breath and moved forward. Not toward Dominic, not toward the empty seat that had probably been reserved for her beside her fiancé. Instead, she walked straight across the room toward Victor, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor in the sudden silence. Evelyn? Dominic's voice cut through the quiet. What are you doing here? She didn't answer, didn't even look at him. Her entire focus was on Victor, on the man watching her approach with something that might have been approval in his expression. The room held its collective breath. Evelyn reached Victor's table, and without hesitation, without asking permission, she moved to stand directly beside him. His hand came up to rest on her hip, possessive, claiming, utterly confident. Gentlemen, Victor said calmly, his voice carrying easily through the silent room. Some of you know Evelyn Carter. For those who don't, she controls Carter Shipping and half the port authority in this city. She's also my newest business partner. The shock was palpable. Evelyn could feel dozens of eyes on her, assessing, calculating, trying to understand what they were witnessing. "Victor, what the hell is this?" Dominic was on his feet now, his face flushed with anger and confusion. "Evelyn is my fiancée. She has no business being here, and she certainly isn't your partner." "Actually," Evelyn spoke for the first time, her voice steady and clear, "I believe I have every right to be here. Carter Shipping does business with every family in this room. It's past time I understood exactly who I'm working with." "You're working with me," Dominic snapped. "We're getting married in 3 weeks. Whatever business you conduct goes through our family." "Is that what you think?" Evelyn's smile was cold. "That once we're married, you'll control my company?" "That's how it works, yes." Dominic's confidence was starting to crack, replaced by something that looked like panic. "We discussed this. Your father arranged it." "My father arranged a marriage that would protect his legacy. He never said I had to marry you specifically." Evelyn let the words sink in. "And given what I've learned about your plans, I've decided to decline the honor." The room erupted in whispers. Dominic stared at her, his face going pale. "What are you talking about? What plans?" "Perhaps," Victor interjected smoothly, "we should show everyone exactly what plans Ms. Carter is referring to." He gestured, and suddenly the large screen at the front of the room flickered to life. Evelyn's video began playing, Dominic's voice filling the room, confessing his affair with Vanessa, outlining his scheme to use Carter Shipping to build power, and most damning of all, discussing his intention to kill Victor and seize control of the commission. The silence as the video played was absolute. Evelyn watched Dominic's expression shift from confusion to horror to rage as he realized what was happening. Around the room, the other family heads leaned forward, their faces hardening as they absorbed the confession. When the video ended, Victor stood, and Evelyn felt him pull her closer against his side. "My nephew," Victor said quietly, his voice somehow more terrifying for its calmness, "planned to murder me and use an alliance with Carter Shipping to position himself as my successor. He violated every code we operate under. He betrayed family, plotted against the commission, and attempted to manipulate a woman into being his accomplice." "That video is fake," Dominic said desperately. "She doctored it. She's lying." "The metadata says otherwise," Victor replied. "We had it verified by 3 independent experts, but more importantly," he looked around the room, "does anyone here actually doubt this is something Dominic would do? Has anyone not noticed his ambition, his resentment?" The silence was damning. No one rose to Dominic's defense. "I move that Dominic Varela be stripped of his position within the Varela family and exiled from this city," Victor continued. "All in favor?" Hands rose around the room, not everyone, but enough. The vote was clear. Dominic's face contorted with fury. "You bitch," he snarled at Evelyn. "You manipulative, scheming bitch. You think you've won? You think allying with him makes you powerful?" "No," Evelyn said calmly. "I think using you would have made me weak. Choosing my own path makes me powerful. There's a difference." Dominic lunged forward, but Victor's security was faster. 2 men materialized from the shadows and grabbed Dominic's arms, restraining him before he could reach Evelyn. "You have 24 hours to leave the city," Victor told his nephew. "Take whatever you can carry. Everything else stays. If you're still here after tomorrow night, the commission's judgment becomes permanent." The finality in his voice made it clear what permanent meant. Dominic struggled against the men holding him, his eyes wild. "This isn't over. You think you can just exile me? I have allies. You have nothing," Victor interrupted. "You gambled everything on a plan that required Evelyn to be weak and stupid. You were wrong on both counts. Now you pay the price for that miscalculation." Security dragged Dominic toward the exit, his protests echoing until the door closed behind him. Then Victor turned back to the assembled families. "Now that the unpleasant business is handled, let me formally introduce my new partner." His hand tightened on Evelyn's hip. "Carter Shipping will be working exclusively with the Salazar family going forward. Any goods that need to move through the port come through us. Any arrangements previously made with Dominic Varela are void." Evelyn felt the weight of every gaze in the room. This was the moment. The public claiming that would cement her alliance with Victor and change everything about how the family saw her. She turned to Victor, and he looked down at her with those dark, intense eyes. Then she did exactly what she'd practiced, what they'd planned, what she wanted to do. Evelyn reached up, pulled Victor's head down, and kissed him. The kiss was everything it needed to be, confident, possessive, absolutely unmistakable in its message. This wasn't a tentative alliance. This was a declaration, a claiming, a statement that Evelyn Carter belonged to Victor Salazar and he to her. When they broke apart, the room remained silent. Then, slowly, someone began to clap. Others joined in, applause that was equal parts approval, respect, and acknowledgement of the power play they'd just witnessed. Victor smiled, dangerous and satisfied. Gentlemen, ladies, I believe we have a new understanding about how port operations will work in this city, unless there are any objections. No one objected. The meeting dissolved into smaller conversations as people processed what had happened. Evelyn stayed beside Victor, feeling his solid presence at her back as various family representatives approached to introduce themselves or offer congratulations on the new alliance. Antonio Moreno was among them, his weathered face splitting into a grin. "Victor, you sly bastard. I should have known when Dominic came to me with his proposal yesterday. He was too eager, too confident. Should have realized he was overplaying his hand." "Live and learn," Victor said mildly. "Antonio, this is Evelyn Carter. I trust you'll extend her the same respect you show me." "Of course." Moreno took Evelyn's hand and kissed it. "Your father was a good man, Ms. Carter. Smart, too. He'd be proud of how you handled this situation." Evelyn smiled. "Thank you. I hope we can continue the productive relationship Carter Shipping has always had with your operations." "Absolutely. Victor's partners are my partners." They worked the room for another hour, Evelyn meeting the power players of the city's underworld, cementing her new position. By the time the crowd began to thin, her face hurt from smiling and her feet ached from the heels. Finally, Victor leaned down to murmur in her ear, "We're leaving. There's someone you need to see." He led her back to the private elevator, and they rode up in charged silence. When the doors opened to the penthouse level, Evelyn was surprised to see they weren't alone. Vanessa sat on the couch, flanked by two of Victor's security people. Her sister looked smaller than Evelyn remembered, her usual confidence stripped away by fear. "Evie?" Vanessa breathed when she saw her. "Thank God. Tell them there's been a mistake. Tell them I didn't know what Dominic was planning." Evelyn walked closer, studying her sister. The woman who'd shared her childhood, who'd stood beside her at their father's funeral, who'd betrayed her in the worst possible way. "You knew," Evelyn said quietly. "I heard you on the video. You knew he was using me. You knew he planned to kill Victor, and you didn't care." "I loved him," Vanessa said desperately. I thought once he had power, once he controlled everything, we could be together. I didn't think about what it meant for you." "No, you didn't." Evelyn felt nothing but cold emptiness where love for her sister used to live. "You never did think about anyone but yourself." "Please." Tears streamed down Vanessa's face. "I'm your sister. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Don't let him hurt me." Victor moved to stand beside Evelyn. "That's not my decision to make. This is between you and your sister." Evelyn looked at Vanessa, really looked at her, saw the selfishness that had always been there, the entitlement, the casual cruelty disguised as charm. She thought about forgiveness, about family, about all the reasons she should show mercy. Then she thought about Dominic's hands on her sister's body while he planned to use Evelyn as a pawn, about the lies, the betrayal, the complete lack of remorse until consequences arrived. "You're going to leave the city," Evelyn said flatly. "Tonight, you'll go somewhere far away, and you'll never contact me again. You'll never use the Carter name, never claim connection to our family, never speak about what happened here." "Evie, I'm not finished." Evelyn's voice could have cut glass. "In exchange for your life and your freedom, you'll sign documents transferring any inheritance from Dad's estate to a charity I'll designate. You'll disappear completely. And if I ever hear that you've violated these terms, if you ever come back to this city or try to reconnect, the protection I'm offering ends permanently." Vanessa stared at her, comprehension dawning. "You're exiling me, just like Dominic." "Yes. The difference is I'm giving you a choice about where you go and enough money to start over somewhere else. That's more mercy than you showed me." For a long moment, Vanessa looked like she might argue, Then she saw something in Evelyn's expression, the absolute finality of it, and her shoulders slumped. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll go." Victor gestured to his security. "Take her to process the paperwork. She has 2 hours to pack and catch a flight." They escorted Vanessa out, her sobs echoing until the door closed. Then Evelyn and Victor were alone. The silence in the penthouse felt heavy, with everything left unsaid between them. Evelyn walked to the window, her reflection ghostly against the city lights beyond. She'd just exiled her only sister, destroyed her engagement, publicly aligned herself with the city's most powerful crime boss. And somehow, standing here in the quiet aftermath, she felt lighter than she had in months. "Are you all right?" Victor's voice came from behind her, closer than she expected. "I don't know," Evelyn admitted. "I should feel something, shouldn't I? Guilt? Regret? Something other than this relief. Relief is normal. You just cut away the parts of your life that were poisoning you." Victor moved to stand beside her, their reflections merging in the glass. That takes strength most people never find. Or ruthlessness. Evelyn met his eyes in the reflection. "I just condemned my sister to exile without hesitation. What does that make me?" "Powerful. Decisive. Someone who understands that mercy to the cruel is cruelty to the innocent." Victor turned to face her directly. Vanessa knew what Dominic was planning. She could have warned you, protected you, chosen you over him. She didn't. Why should you sacrifice yourself to protect her now? "Because she's family, because my father would have wanted me to forgive her." Evelyn's voice cracked slightly. "Because once I loved her. Love that isn't returned is just self-destruction with a prettier name." Victor reached out, cupping her face with surprising gentleness. "Your father wanted you safe and happy. Do you think watching Vanessa destroy you would have made him proud?" "No," Evelyn whispered, "but he also never wanted me to become this. Someone who casually exiles family members and kisses crime bosses in front of entire rooms of criminals. And yet you did both tonight with perfect composure." Victor's thumb brushed her cheekbone. "So the question isn't whether your father would approve. The question is whether you approve, whether you can live with the woman you're becoming." Evelyn considered that carefully. The woman she'd been a week ago would never have recorded her fiancé's betrayal, would never have walked into the Monarch Club alone, would certainly never have kissed Victor Salazar in front of the commission and claimed her place in his world. But that woman had also been miserable, trapped in an arranged marriage to a man who saw her as a tool, isolated from real power by the protective bubble her father had built around her. Safe, perhaps, but also invisible, voiceless, weak. "I can live with her," Evelyn said finally. "This version of me, the one who fights back and makes hard choices and refuses to be used. I can live with her just fine." "Good," Victor's smile was approving, "because she's magnificent." The compliment sent warmth through Evelyn's chest. Before she could second-guess herself, she closed the distance between them and kissed him. Not for an audience this time, not as part of a performance, just because she wanted to, because the attraction between them had been building since that first night, because something about Victor saw past all her defenses and understood her in ways no one else ever had. Victor responded immediately, his arms coming around her waist and pulling her flush against him. The kiss deepened, became heated, full of the tension that had been crackling between them for days. His hand slid down her back, the emerald silk dress suddenly feeling like too much fabric between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor's eyes had darkened with hunger. "We should talk about this, about what happens now." "Talk?" Evelyn raised an eyebrow, her fingers playing with his collar. "I thought we'd moved past talking." "Evelyn?" Victor caught her hands, holding them still. "I need you to understand something. What happened tonight in front of the commission, that changes things. Every family in this city now sees you as mine, as part of my organization. That's not a performance we can stop when the audience leaves." "I know." Evelyn met his gaze steadily. "I knew that when I walked into that room. When I kissed you. When I chose this alliance over everything else." "Do you? Because there are consequences you haven't considered yet. Business competitors who will see you as a target. Law enforcement who will investigate your company more closely because of your association with me. a life that's considerably more dangerous than anything you've experienced before. You're trying to scare me. Evelyn pulled her hands free and stepped back. Why? Having second thoughts about our partnership? No, I'm trying to make sure you understand what you've committed to. Victor's voice softened. You impressed me tonight, Evelyn, the way you handled Dominic, the commission, even your sister. You were perfect, but perfection under pressure and living this life long term are very different things. So what are you suggesting? That I back out now? Pretend tonight didn't happen? I'm suggesting we establish clear terms for what this alliance actually is. Victor moved to the bar and poured 2 drinks. Business partnership? Yes, clearly. But the personal aspect, what we just did, what's been building between us, that needs definition too. Evelyn accepted the glass he offered, using the moment to collect her thoughts. He was right, of course. The attraction between them was undeniable, the chemistry explosive. But chemistry wasn't a business plan. It wasn't a foundation for the kind of partnership they were building. What do you want it to be? She asked quietly. Victor studied her for a long moment. Honestly, I want you. Have since the moment you walked into my club alone with nothing but evidence and audacity. But I also respect you too much to complicate a good business arrangement with unclear personal expectations. So we keep it professional. Is that what you want? Evelyn looked at him, this dangerous, powerful man who'd become her ally, her partner, possibly something more. The smart choice was obvious. Maintain professional boundaries, keep their alliance clean and uncomplicated, focus on business. But Evelyn was discovering she was tired of making the smart choice when it meant denying what she actually wanted. No, she said firmly, I don't want to keep it professional. I want to explore whatever this is between us. Carefully, yes, with clear communication about expectations. But I don't want to pretend there's nothing here when we both know there is. Victor's smile was slow and satisfied. Then we moved forward, together, as partners in every sense of the word. He set down his glass and moved closer. But you need to promise me something. What? If this ever stops working, business or personal, you tell me immediately. No suffering in silence, no protecting my feelings at the expense of yours. We're equals in this, Evelyn. That means honest communication always. I can agree to that. Evelyn set down her own glass. Same goes for you. If the personal aspect starts interfering with business, or if you want out, you tell me directly. Deal. Victor pulled her back into his arms, and this time when they kissed, it felt like sealing more than just a business arrangement. They kissed for a long time, learning each other's rhythms, testing boundaries, building the foundation of something that felt both dangerous and inevitable. When Victor finally pulled back, his control clearly tested, he rested his forehead against hers. Stay tonight, he murmured, not because of the alliance or the performance, just because I want you here. Evelyn's heart raced. This was a line they couldn't uncross. Once she stayed, once they took this step, everything would change between them. But then again, everything had already changed. Why pretend otherwise? Okay, she whispered, I'll stay. Victor's smile was brilliant. He took her hand and led her through the penthouse to a bedroom that was all clean lines and masculine elegance. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered the same spectacular city view, the lights spreading out like stars below them. I should probably mention, Evelyn said as Victor's hands found the zipper of her dress, I've only been with one person before, and that was Dominic, which I'm rapidly realizing was a terrible baseline for comparison. Victor paused, his fingers stilling on the zipper. We don't have to do this tonight. There's no rush. I know, but I want to. Evelyn turned to face him. I want to replace every memory of him with something real, something honest. I want this with you. The vulnerability in her admission seemed to affect Victor deeply. His expression softened, and when he kissed her this time, it was gentle, reverent, completely different from the heated passion of moments before. Then we take our time, he murmured against her lips. No rush, no pressure, just us. He was true to his word. Victor undressed her slowly, treating each revealed inch of skin like something precious. His hands and mouth explored her with patience that made Evelyn tremble. When she fumbled with the buttons of his shirt, nervous despite her desire, he guided her hands with quiet encouragement. Making love with Victor was nothing like the efficient, somewhat mechanical encounters she'd shared with Dominic. This was intensity and connection, passion tempered with tenderness, a claiming that felt mutual rather than one-sided. Victor paid attention to every response, every gasp and sigh, learning what she liked with single-minded focus. Afterward, Evelyn lay curled against his side, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow to normal. The city lights painted patterns across the ceiling, and she felt more at peace than she had in months. That was, she started, then couldn't find words adequate to describe it. Yeah, Victor agreed, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. It was. They lay in comfortable silence for a while. Then Victor spoke again, his voice thoughtful. I need to tell you something about the commission, about what happens next. Evelyn propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. What? Tonight was the easy part. We exposed Dominic, exiled him, made our alliance public. But there are going to be challenges. Other families testing our partnership, looking for weaknesses. People who resent the power shift we just created. I expected that. Did you expect Antonio Moreno to try recruiting you away from me within the next month? Because he will. He sees Carter Shipping as a strategic asset, and he'll offer you very attractive terms to switch allegiances. Evelyn frowned. He seemed friendly tonight. He was friendly because antagonizing me in public would be stupid. But in private, away from commission oversight, he'll absolutely try to poach you. It's what I would do in his position. Victor's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing. The question is whether you're prepared to handle that kind of pressure, whether our alliance is solid enough to withstand serious temptation. Are you testing me? Evelyn's tone sharpened. Trying to see if I'll stay loyal? No. I'm making sure you understand that loyalty in my world comes with a price. Moreno will offer you more money, better terms, maybe even genuine friendship. And he'll do it all while subtly undermining your faith in me. Victor met her eyes. I need to know you can handle that without wavering. I chose you for a reason, Victor. Multiple reasons, actually. Strategic, personal, and everything in between. Evelyn squeezed his hand. I'm not going to abandon that alliance the first time someone offers me a better deal. That's not who I am. Good. Because there's something else you should know. Victor sat up, pulling her with him. The commission voted tonight to offer you a seat at the table. As an official representative, not just my partner. Evelyn stared at him, shocked. What? That's... Women don't usually sit on the commission. No, but you're not usual. You control infrastructure every family needs. You proved tonight you have the intelligence and courage to operate in our world. And whether they like it or not, you've earned their respect. Victor's smile was proud. Antonio proposed it. The others agreed. You'd be the first woman in the commission's 40-year history to hold a seat. The magnitude of that hit Evelyn like a physical blow. A seat at the commission table meant real power, real influence over how the city's underworld operated. It meant permanently cementing her place in this world, leaving behind any pretense of being just a legitimate businesswoman. That's huge, she managed. It is, and it's also dangerous. You'd be making yourself a very visible target. Every ambitious person in this city would see you as either an asset to be acquired or a threat to be eliminated. Victor's expression grew serious. Before you accept, you need to understand what you'd be walking into. This isn't temporary. This isn't something you can walk away from later. Once you're on the commission, you're committed for life. For life, Evelyn repeated softly. Like a mafia wife in old movies. Worse, wives can divorce. Commission members either retire after decades of service or die in their positions. There's no middle ground. Victor took both her hands. So I'm asking you directly, is this really what you want? Because I'll support whatever you decide. If you want to maintain our business alliance without the commission seat, I'll make that work. If you want to step back entirely, return to running Carter Shipping as a purely legitimate operation, I'll protect that choice too. Evelyn looked around the bedroom, at the luxury surrounding them, the city lights beyond the windows, the man watching her with such intensity. A week ago, her biggest concern had been choosing wedding cake flavors. Now she was being offered a seat at the table that controlled organized crime in the entire city. It was insane, reckless, dangerous, everything her father had tried to protect her from. It was also exactly what she wanted. When's the vote? She asked. Victor's smile suggested he'd expected that response. 2 weeks. Gives you time to prepare, to understand exactly what you're committing to. We'll spend that time educating you on commission politics, introducing you to key players more formally, making sure you're ready. And if I accept, what does that mean for us? Evelyn gestured between them. Can we maintain a personal relationship if we're both on the commission? There's no rule against it. Several commission members have spouses or partners who are also involved in the business. But it does add complexity. People will assume you vote the way I tell you to, that you're just an extension of my power rather than your own entity. Let them assume. I'll prove them wrong. Evelyn's voice hardened with determination, just like I proved Dominic wrong when he assumed I'd be a passive pawn. That's my girl. Victor pulled her back down beside him, kissing her thoroughly. We'll make a hell of a team. They spent the rest of the night planning, discussing strategy, mapping out how the next 2 weeks would unfold. Victor explained commission politics, the alliances and feuds that had shaped the city's underworld for decades. He taught her the unwritten rules, the subtle signals, the ways power was negotiated in rooms where traditional law didn't reach. Evelyn absorbed it all, her mind racing with possibilities. With a commission seat, she could do more than just protect Carter shipping. She could influence how the entire port operated, ensure fair treatment for the workers, maybe even push the families toward more legitimate business operations over time. You're thinking about reform, Victor observed, reading her expression. Trying to figure out how to make the commission more ethical. Is that naive? It's optimistic, but not necessarily naive. Victor considered her thoughtfully. The families are already moving toward more legitimate operations. Drugs and guns are too risky with modern law enforcement. Real money is in real estate, construction, technology. Your presence on the commission could accelerate that shift. Would you support that? Moving away from the traditional criminal operations? I've been pushing for it for years. Old guard like the Russos resist, but they're dying out. The younger generation understands that real power comes from owning infrastructure, not controlling vice. Victor's hand found hers again. With you on the commission, we'd have the votes to make significant changes. They talked until dawn painted the sky pink and gold. When Evelyn finally fell asleep, still wrapped in Victor's arms, she dreamed of boardrooms and power plays, of transforming her father's legacy into something even greater than he'd imagined. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. Victor stood by the window, already dressed in fresh clothes, talking quietly on the phone. He looked up when he noticed her stirring and ended the call. "Good morning," he said, bringing her a cup of coffee prepared exactly how she liked it, something he'd apparently remembered from their previous meetings. "How do you feel?" "Sore," Evelyn admitted, stretching. "But good, really good." "Glad to hear it." Victor sat on the edge of the bed. "I have news. Dominic left the city 3 hours ago. Vanessa caught a flight to Paris around the same time. Both of them are gone." The relief was immediate and profound. So it's really over. That chapter is? New ones are just beginning. Victor handed her a tablet. These are messages from the other commission families. Congratulations on the alliance, requests for meetings, the usual political maneuvering. You'll need to respond to them carefully. Evelyn scrolled through the messages, recognizing names from the previous night. Antonio Moreno had sent a particularly warm note, just as Victor had predicted, suggesting they meet for lunch to discuss mutual interests. "He's already making his move," she observed. "Of course. Antonio never wastes time." Victor's tone held grudging respect. "You should accept the lunch. It'll look suspicious if you avoid him entirely. Just remember, everything he offers will sound reasonable and appealing. That's how he operates." "I'll be careful, Moti." Evelyn set down the tablet and pulled Victor down for a kiss. "Thank you for everything, for believing I could handle this, for treating me like an equal instead of someone who needs constant protection." "You are my equal, Evelyn. Maybe the only person in this city who is." Victor's smile was genuine, warm in a way she suspected few people ever saw. "Now get dressed. We have a busy day ahead." The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and strategic positioning. Evelyn met with every commission family individually, learning their interests and concerns. She had the lunch with Antonio Moreno, who was indeed charming and persuasive, offering generous terms if she'd consider switching her primary alliance. She declined politely but firmly, exactly as Victor had coached her. She also spent considerable time at Carter Shipping, ensuring her legitimate business continued to thrive despite her increasing involvement in the underworld. Robert Chen noticed the change in her immediately. "You're different," he observed during a private meeting in her office. "More confident, sharper somehow." "I'm just finally stepping into the role Dad prepared me for," Evelyn replied carefully. "Are you?" Chen's eyes were shrewd. "Or are you stepping into a role he never imagined? One that involves regular meetings with Victor Salazar and newly forming alliances that blur the line between legitimate business and other interests?" Evelyn met his gaze steadily. "Would that concern you?" "It would depend on whether you're in control of these alliances or being controlled by them." Chen leaned forward. "Your father walked a very fine line, Evelyn. He did business with the families without becoming one of them. Can you maintain that distinction? The world has changed since Dad's time. The lines aren't as clear as they used to be." Evelyn chose her words carefully. "But yes, I'm in control. Every decision I make is my own choice, for my own reasons." "Then I'll support you, as I supported your father." Chen stood. "But please, be careful. Power in that world comes at a steep price." "I know," Evelyn said softly. "I'm learning to pay it." Throughout those 2 weeks, her relationship with Victor deepened. They spent most nights together, sometimes at his penthouse, sometimes at her apartment. They talked for hours about everything: business, philosophy, their pasts, their hopes for the future. Victor told her about growing up in the family business, about the violence he'd witnessed and committed, about his complicated feelings toward power and legacy. Evelyn shared her own history, the loneliness of being groomed for an arranged marriage, the pressure of inheriting her father's empire, the isolation that came from being surrounded by people who wanted something from her. With Victor, she felt seen in ways she never had before, understood, valued for her mind as much as her assets. The physical attraction between them remained electric. Making love with Victor became a refuge from the constant political maneuvering, a place where they could be completely honest and vulnerable with each other. He was an attentive lover, generous and patient, teaching Evelyn pleasures she'd never experienced with Dominic. But it was the quiet moments she treasured most. Victor reading beside her in bed, their hands intertwined, cooking breakfast together in his kitchen, laughing at her terrible attempt to flip pancakes, standing at the window overlooking the city, his arms around her waist, discussing their plans for reshaping the commission. "I could get used to this," Evelyn murmured one evening as they watched the sunset paint the sky crimson. "Good," Victor replied, kissing the top of her head, "because I intend to keep you around for a very long time." The night before the commission vote, Victor threw a private dinner party at the Monarch Club. All 5 family heads attended, along with their key advisors and partners. It was Evelyn's final test before the official vote, a chance to demonstrate she belonged in their world. She wore a stunning midnight blue gown that Victor had selected, her hair swept up in an elegant style, her mother's diamonds at her throat. When she entered the room on Victor's arm, conversation paused as heads turned to assess her. Antonio Moreno approached first, kissing her hand with old-world courtesy. "Miss Carter, you look radiant. Victor is a lucky man." "I think we're both lucky," Evelyn replied smoothly. "Thank you for your support regarding the commission's seat. I understand you were instrumental in proposing it. A formality. You'd already earned it." Moreno's smile was warm, but his eyes remained calculating. "Though I hope you'll remember my support when it comes time to vote on port access agreements." "I'll remember everything, Mr. Moreno, the support and the self-interest behind it." He laughed, genuinely delighted. "Victor, she's sharp as a blade. Hold on to this one." "I intend to," Victor said mildly, his hand possessive on Evelyn's waist. The evening progressed through careful conversation and political dance. Evelyn held her own with each family representative, demonstrating knowledge of their interests while making no commitments that would compromise her independence. By the time dessert was served, she could feel the room's assessment shifting from skepticism to respect. Marcus Russo, the oldest commission member, raised his glass in a toast. To Evelyn Carter, Marcus Carter's daughter, and a formidable woman in her own right. May she bring wisdom and prosperity to our table. Everyone drank to that, even those who clearly still had reservations. Evelyn felt Victor's hand squeeze hers under the table. Pride and support communicated through that simple touch. Later, as the guests departed, Antonio Moreno pulled Evelyn aside for a private word. "Tomorrow, you'll take your seat at the commission table. Once you do, there's no going back." His voice was serious, the charm stripped away. "Are you certain this is what you want? Because there are other paths available to someone with your resources." "I appreciate your concern, Mr. Moreno, but yes, I'm certain." "Then let me give you some advice from someone who's sat at that table for 20 years. Moreno's expression grew intent. "Victor cares about you, I can see it, but don't let that care make you dependent on him. Maintain your own power base, your own allies, your own leverage. Because in our world, love is wonderful, but power is survival." "I'll remember that," Evelyn said quietly. "Thank you. One more thing." Moreno glanced toward where Victor stood talking with the Khans. "If you ever need an ally outside the Salazar family, my door is open. No strings, no expectations, just options. Remember that." He left before Evelyn could respond, leaving her unsettled by the conversation. Was he genuinely offering friendship, or planting seeds of doubt about her relationship with Victor? In this world, she was learning, every gesture carried multiple meanings. Victor found her standing alone, lost in thought. What did Antonio want? To offer advice, and possibly to recruit me again, in a very subtle way. Evelyn turned to face him. "He warned me not to become dependent on you for my power." Smart advice, actually. Victor's response surprised her. Antonio's right. You should maintain independent relationships, your own network. Relying entirely on me would make you vulnerable if anything happened to our alliance. Are you planning for our alliance to fail? I'm planning for every contingency. It's how I've survived this long. Victor pulled her close. But no, I'm not anticipating failure. Just encouraging you to be strategic about building your position. The stronger you are independently, the stronger our partnership becomes. Evelyn relaxed against him, appreciating once again his refusal to treat her like a possession to be guarded rather than a partner to be empowered. Tomorrow changes everything, she murmured. Tomorrow makes official what was already true. You're one of us now, Evelyn. Have been since the moment you walked into that commission meeting and chose me over Dominic. Victor tilted her chin up to meet his eyes. Are you ready? Yes, Evelyn said with absolute certainty. I'm ready. The morning of the vote dawned clear and cold, winter sunlight cutting sharp angles through Evelyn's apartment windows. She'd barely slept, her mind racing through scenarios and contingencies, replaying every conversation from the past 2 weeks. Victor had stayed with her, his steady presence an anchor in the swirling anxiety. You're overthinking, he murmured, pulling her closer in the pre-dawn darkness. The vote is a formality. Everyone who matters has already decided. And if someone changes their mind, if Russo decides he doesn't want a woman at the table after all, then we handle it. Together. Victor kissed her temple. But it won't come to that. You've proven yourself, Evelyn. Now you just need to walk in there and claim what's yours. She dressed carefully for the occasion, a charcoal suit tailored to perfection, her hair pulled back in a severe bun that made her look older, more authoritative. Diamond studs her father had given her for her college graduation. Simple, elegant, powerful. The woman in the mirror looked like she belonged at that table. The commission convened at 2 in the afternoon in a private room at the Monarch Club that Evelyn had never seen before. Heavy oak doors opened into a space that felt more like a corporate boardroom than a criminal headquarters. A massive table dominated the center, expensive leather chairs arranged around it. Each seat had a small nameplate: Salazar, Moreno, Khan, Russo, Torres. And now, at the end closest to Victor's position, a new nameplate read simply, Carter. Evelyn's breath caught at the sight of it. This was real. This was happening. The other families were already present, settled into their seats with the casual confidence of people who'd occupied these positions for years. Victor guided Evelyn to her chair, his hand briefly touching her shoulder in support before he took his own seat. Marcus Russo called the meeting to order, his weathered face grave. We're here to vote on a historic matter, the addition of Evelyn Carter to the commission as a full voting member. This decision requires unanimous consent. We'll hear statements from each family, then proceed to the vote. Antonio Moreno spoke first, his voice carrying the warmth that had made him so successful in politics. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Ms. Carter over the past 2 weeks. She's demonstrated intelligence, strategic thinking, and a deep understanding of how our interests align with legitimate business operations. More importantly, she controls infrastructure we all depend on. Having her at this table formalizes a relationship that already exists in practice. I vote yes. The Khans went next, a husband and wife team who'd built their empire together. Rashid Khan's accent still carried traces of his childhood in Karachi. Carter Shipping has been a reliable partner for 30 years. Marcus Carter understood discretion, efficiency, and mutual benefit. His daughter has proven she inherited those qualities. We vote yes. Elena Torres, youngest of the family heads at 36, leaned forward with a sharp smile. Let's be honest about what this is. Ms. Carter brings legitimacy we desperately need as we transition away from traditional operations. She also brings fresh perspective to a table that's been dominated by the same thinking for decades. I vote yes. That left only Marcus Russo, the old guard, the one Victor had warned her about. Russo studied Evelyn with eyes that had seen 40 years of criminal enterprise, that had watched men rise and fall, that had learned to spot weakness from across a room. I've been sitting at this table longer than anyone, Russo began, his voice gravelly with age. I've seen reforms come and go, new members who promised change and delivered chaos. I've watched this commission evolve from street enforcers to legitimate business people, and I'm not convinced that's always been progress. Evelyn's stomach tightened, but she kept her expression neutral, meeting Russo's gaze without flinching. That said, Russo continued, I'm also practical. Miss Carter controls assets we need. She's proven herself capable under pressure. And frankly, watching her handle Dominic Varela's betrayal was impressive. He paused, and something that might have been respect flickered across his face. My concern isn't her capability. It's her independence. Victor, you gonna tell me she's not just an extension of Salazar interests? Victor started to respond, but Evelyn spoke first. With respect, Mr. Russo, Victor doesn't speak for me. I speak for myself. The room went silent. Evelyn felt Victor's surprise beside her, but she kept her focus on Russo. You're right to question my independence, she continued. Victor and I have a personal relationship. We're also business partners, but Carter Shipping's interests aren't identical to Salazar interests. There will be votes where we disagree, decisions where my company's needs conflict with his organization's priorities. When that happens, I'll vote my conscience and my business interests, not his preferences. She looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes in turn. I'm not asking to join this commission as anyone's puppet. I'm asking to join as an equal member representing my own considerable assets and interests. If that's not acceptable, vote no now. Save us all the trouble of discovering it later. The silence stretched. Then Russo started laughing, a deep, genuine sound that transformed his stern face. Took me 3 years on this commission before I had the balls to talk to Victor that way. You did it in your first meeting. He nodded slowly. All right, Ms. Carter. You've got steel. I respect that. I vote yes. Relief flooded through Evelyn, but she kept her expression controlled as Russo continued. Welcome to the commission. Try not to reform us too much in your first year. The vote was called and passed unanimously. Just like that, Evelyn Carter became the first woman in commission history to hold a seat at the table. Victor reached under the table and squeezed her hand, pride evident in his eyes. First order of business, Victor said, moving smoothly into commission matters. Port access fees. The current structure was negotiated 5 years ago under very different circumstances. I propose we renegotiate terms that better reflect current market conditions. The meeting proceeded through various agenda items: territorial disputes, revenue sharing, plans for legitimate business expansion. Evelyn listened carefully, noting the dynamics between families, the subtle power plays, the careful negotiation of competing interests. When the topic of shifting away from drug trafficking came up, she spoke for the second time. I have a proposal. Carter Shipping can facilitate legitimate pharmaceutical imports that would be significantly more profitable than street distribution. Legal, sustainable, and with considerably less law enforcement risk. I've prepared preliminary numbers. She distributed the analysis she'd spent the past week preparing. The room went quiet as the family heads reviewed her projections. "These profit margins are real?" Elena Torres asked, scanning the documents. "Conservative, actually. With proper licensing and distribution channels, we could increase them by another 15%. "You've done your homework," Moreno observed approvingly. "I don't bring proposals to this table without thorough preparation." Evelyn's voice carried confidence she'd earned. "The days of high-risk, low-margin criminal enterprise are ending. Law enforcement is too sophisticated. The real money is in legitimate business with strategic advantages. We have those advantages. We should use them." The proposal passed 4-1, with only Russo abstaining rather than opposing. A small victory, but Evelyn felt the shift in how the other members viewed her, not as Victor's companion, as a strategic thinker in her own right. The meeting adjourned after 3 hours. As the families filed out, each stopped to congratulate Evelyn on her appointment. Even Russo offered grudging respect. "Your father would be proud," he said quietly. "Or horrified, possibly both." "Probably both," Evelyn agreed with a small smile. When they were finally alone, Victor pulled her into his arms. "You were magnificent, especially the part where you essentially told me to stay out of your business in front of everyone." "Was that too much?" Evelyn looked up at him, suddenly uncertain. "It was perfect. You established independence while maintaining our alliance. Exactly what you needed to do." Victor's smile was warm. "I'm genuinely proud of you, Evelyn. Not many people could have handled that pressure with such grace." "I had a good teacher." She kissed him softly. "And a good partner." They returned to Victor's penthouse, both energized by the successful vote. Evelyn felt like she was walking on air, adrenaline and triumph mixing into something intoxicating. She'd done it. She'd claimed a seat at the most powerful table in the city. "Champagne," Victor offered, moving to the bar. "Actually, I have a better idea." Evelyn pulled him toward the bedroom, her intentions clear in her smile. "Celebrating, are we?" Victor's eyes darkened with desire. "We are." Evelyn pushed him gently onto the bed, climbing into his lap with newfound confidence. "I just became one of the most powerful people in this city. I think that deserves proper celebration." Making love that afternoon felt different than before. Evelyn moved with assurance born from victory, claiming her pleasure as boldly as she'd claimed her commission seat. Victor matched her intensity, their connection deepening with each touch, each kiss, each whispered word. Afterward, they lay tangled together, satisfied and content. Victor traced lazy patterns on Evelyn's bare shoulder, his expression thoughtful. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That I'm falling in love with you." The words were simple, honest. "Possibly already have fallen. I'm not sure when it happened." Evelyn's heart stuttered. "Victor, you don't have to say it back. I just wanted you to know." He met her eyes. "This started as a strategic alliance, became something physical. But somewhere along the way it became more. At least for me." She kissed him, pouring everything she couldn't quite articulate into the gesture. "For me too. I'm not sure when it happened either. Maybe that first night when you treated me like an equal instead of a victim. Maybe when you coached me through that commission performance. Or maybe it was just inevitable from the moment we met." "Inevitable," Victor repeated with a smile. "I like that." They spent the evening planning the future, not just commission business, but their personal future together. Where they'd live, how they'd manage their respective organizations, what their relationship would look like long term. "Move in here," Victor suggested. "Your apartment is beautiful, but this space is more secure, better suited for someone in your position now." "Our position," Evelyn corrected. "We're partners, remember?" "Our position," Victor agreed. "So is that a yes?" "It's a yes, but we're redecorating. Some of this furniture is aggressively masculine." "Deal. You can make it as feminine as you want, as long as you're here." The next few months passed in a whirlwind of change and growth. Evelyn moved into Victor's penthouse, and true to his word, he let her transform it into a space that reflected both their tastes. She threw herself into commission work, quickly establishing herself as a voice for strategic reform and legitimate business expansion. Her pharmaceutical import proposal proved wildly successful, generating revenue that dwarfed what the families had been making from street-level drug distribution. Other legitimate ventures followed. real estate development, technology investments, international shipping contracts. Under Evelyn's guidance, the commission began the slow transformation from criminal enterprise to legitimate business empire. Not everyone welcomed the changes. There were challenges, competitors who tried to exploit the transition period, law enforcement investigations that required careful navigation, internal resistance from members who preferred the old ways. But Evelyn handled each obstacle with the same strategic thinking she'd used to destroy Dominic. She also grew into her role at Carter Shipping, expanding the company's operations while maintaining the ethical standards her father had established. Robert Chen eventually learned the full scope of her commission involvement, and after considerable deliberation, agreed to support her. "Your father operated in gray areas too," he admitted. "You're just more honest about it." 6 months after joining the commission, Evelyn received an unexpected visitor at her office. Vanessa appeared without warning, looking thin and tired, her usual polish dimmed by months of exile. "I know I'm not supposed to be here," Vanessa said from the doorway, "but I needed to see you." Evelyn studied her sister, the woman who'd betrayed her, slept with her fiancé, participated in a plan to destroy her. The anger had faded over the months, replaced by something closer to indifference. "You have 5 minutes," Evelyn said coolly. Vanessa sank into the chair across from her desk. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, what I destroyed, and I'm sorry." "Why now? Why come back after 6 months?" "Because I've been living with the consequences of my choices. Exile, isolation, watching from a distance as you became everything I never could be." Vanessa's voice cracked. "I was jealous, Evie, always. You were Dad's favorite, the one he trusted with his legacy. I wanted to matter to someone the way you mattered to him. Dominic made me feel important. I was stupid enough to choose that feeling over my own sister." Evelyn felt no satisfaction in her sister's pain, but no sympathy either. "What do you want from me, Vanessa?" "Nothing. Just to say I'm sorry. And that you were right to exile me. I needed to understand what I'd lost." Vanessa stood, her movements defeated. "I'm not asking to come back. I just needed you to know that I see clearly now. You're extraordinary, Evie. You always were. I was too jealous to appreciate it." She turned to leave, but Evelyn's voice stopped her. "Vanessa, wait." Her sister paused, hope flickering across her face. "You can come back to the city," Evelyn said carefully. "But not into my life. Not into the family business. You find your own way, build your own future, separate from anything I've created. If you can do that, if you can prove you've actually changed, maybe someday we can have a relationship again. But it starts with you respecting the boundaries I'm setting." Tears streamed down Vanessa's face. "Thank you. I won't let you down." "You already did," Evelyn said flatly. "Now you get the chance to not do it again. Don't waste it." After Vanessa left, Evelyn sat quietly, processing the encounter. She felt Victor's presence before she saw him. He'd been waiting in the outer office, giving her privacy but staying close in case she needed him. "You heard?" she asked. "Most of it." Victor moved behind her chair, his hands coming to rest on her shoulders. "You were generous with her." "I was practical. Keeping her in exile forever serves no purpose except vengeance. And I've learned that power wielded with restraint is more impressive than power wielded with cruelty." Victor's hands tightened on her shoulders. "You've changed since that first night, grown into someone even more formidable than I imagined. We both have. This partnership has been good for us." More than good. Victor pulled her to her feet and turned her to face him. "Evelyn Carter, I think it's time we made this official." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds, the green stone matching the dress she'd worn to the first commission meeting. "I know we started this as a strategic alliance," Victor said, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. "But somewhere along the way, strategy became love, business became partnership, and I can't imagine my life without you in it. Marry me. Not for business, not for the commission, just because I love you and want to spend the rest of my life with you." Evelyn stared at the ring, her heart pounding. 6 months ago, she'd been planning a wedding to a man who'd wanted to use her. Now she was being proposed to by a man who saw her as an equal, who'd helped her claim her power, who loved her for her strength rather than despite it. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Victor slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, just like they did. He kissed her with a tenderness that still had the power to make her knees weak, even after months together. "Should we tell the commission?" Evelyn asked when they finally broke apart. "Eventually. But tonight, let's just celebrate. Just us." They drove to the overlook where Evelyn had gone the night she discovered Dominic's betrayal, the spot where she'd made the decision to fight back instead of breaking down. The city spread before them, lights glittering like stars, everything her father had built and everything she'd claimed for herself. "I used to come here and feel overwhelmed," Evelyn said softly. "All that responsibility, all those expectations, I felt so small compared to what Dad had accomplished. And now?" Victor stood behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist. "Now I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Powerful enough to protect what matters. Smart enough to build something even greater. Strong enough to choose love without losing myself." "Your father would be proud," Victor said, "even if he'd be complicated about how you got here." Evelyn thought about Marcus Carter, about the empire he'd built and the daughter he'd tried to protect. He'd meant well with the arranged marriage, with the careful distance from direct criminal involvement. But his protection had also been limitation, keeping her invisible and powerless. "I think he'd understand," she said finally. "He taught me to be strategic, to think long-term, to value power and security. I'm just applying those lessons in ways he never anticipated." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city that belonged to them now. Not through inheritance or manipulation, but through intelligence, courage, and the kind of partnership that made both of them stronger. 3 months later, they married in a private ceremony at the Monarch Club with only the commission families in attendance. Evelyn wore cream silk instead of traditional white, a deliberate choice that signaled this wasn't an innocent first wedding, but a powerful alliance between equals. Antonio Moreno officiated, his voice warm as he pronounced them husband and wife. "I've watched a lot of marriages in this business," he said as they exchanged rings. "Most are strategic, some are affectionate. Very few are what you two have built, genuine partnership. May you continue to be each other's greatest strength." The reception was elegant but restrained, nothing like the massive wedding Evelyn had been planning with Dominic. This wasn't about impressing anyone or performing for an audience. This was celebration of something real. Marcus Russo approached during the dancing, his weathered face showing something that might have been sentiment. "Your father and I had our differences, but I respected him. I think he'd approve of this despite everything. You found someone who sees your worth." "Thank you, Mr. Russo." "Marcus, we're family now, in the ways that matter in our world." He patted her hand. "You've been good for the commission, Evelyn. Keep pushing us toward legitimate business. Keep reminding us that power doesn't have to mean violence. We need that perspective." Over the following year, Evelyn's reforms transformed the commission. Drug operations were phased out entirely, replaced by pharmaceutical imports and medical supply distribution. Gambling became gaming licenses and casino partnerships. Protection rackets evolved into legitimate security services. The changes weren't universally popular, but they were profitable, and profit spoke louder than tradition. Carter shipping thrived under the new arrangements, expanding into international markets and forming partnerships with legitimate corporations worldwide. Evelyn's dual role, commission member and shipping executive, created synergies that benefited everyone at the table. Her personal life with Victor deepened as well. They learned each other's rhythms, found balance between their intense public roles and private intimacy, built a life that was genuinely happy despite existing in a dangerous world. One evening, almost 2 years after that first night at the Monarch Club, Evelyn stood at the penthouse window watching the sunset paint the city crimson and gold. Victor joined her, handing her a glass of wine. "Thinking about something specific?" he asked. "About how different everything is now. 2 years ago, I was planning a wedding to a man who wanted to use me, playing the role of dutiful daughter and compliant fiancé, feeling invisible and powerless. And now?" Evelyn smiled, her free hand moving to rest on her stomach where their child grew, a daughter, according to the ultrasound. "Now I'm one of the most powerful people in this city, married to someone who actually loves me. building a legitimate empire while transforming criminal enterprise into ethical business, and about to become a mother. Victor's hand covered hers on her stomach. Terrified yet? Absolutely, but also excited. This baby is going to grow up in a very different world than I did. She'll see her mother as powerful, not protected. She'll learn strategy and strength from the beginning, not after betrayal forces her to find it. She'll be formidable. With you as a mother, how could she be anything else? They stood together, watching their city, the empire they'd built together, from the ashes of betrayal and ambition. Evelyn thought about the woman she'd been that night in Dominic's penthouse, watching her fiancé betray her. That woman had been hurt, angry, determined to survive. This woman was so much more. She was a queen who'd claimed her throne through intelligence and courage. A businesswoman who'd transformed criminal enterprise into legitimate power. A wife in a partnership built on equality and love. Soon, a mother who would teach her daughter that strength didn't mean hardness, that power didn't require cruelty, that you could be both dangerous and good. Do you ever regret it? Victor asked quietly. The choices you made, the world you entered? Evelyn considered the question carefully. She'd given up the safe, protected life her father had envisioned for her. She'd aligned herself with organized crime, claimed a seat at the commission table, built power on foundations that weren't entirely legitimate. She'd become someone her younger self might not recognize, but she'd also become someone who controlled her own destiny, someone who chose her partner instead of having one chosen for her, someone who used power to create change instead of being crushed by those who wielded it. No, she said finally, no regrets. This life, this partnership, this future we're building, it's everything I never knew I wanted, everything I needed to become. Victor pulled her close, and Evelyn relaxed into his embrace, feeling the solid strength of him, the unwavering support he'd shown since that first night. They'd started as allies of necessity and become partners in every sense. They'd built something rare in their world, love that coexisted with power, partnership that enhanced rather than diminished. The city lights began to glow as darkness fell, thousands of points of light spreading out below them like diamonds on black velvet. Somewhere out there, people made their choices, played their games, pursued their ambitions. Some would win, many would lose. All of them operating in a city that Evelyn Carter Salazar now helped shape. She'd turned betrayal into empire, heartbreak into power, and vulnerability into strength. She'd learned the rules of the game and then rewritten them to suit herself. She'd become the most dangerous woman in the city, not through violence or cruelty, but through intelligence, strategic thinking, and the courage to claim what was hers. And standing here with Victor, their daughter growing inside her, the future stretching wide with possibility, Evelyn knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. She'd kissed the devil to destroy the man who betrayed her. And in doing so, she'd found something neither of them had expected. Love that made them both stronger, partnership that transformed them both, and a future built on honesty instead of lies. The woman who'd brought wedding cake samples to her fiancé's penthouse 2 years ago was gone, replaced by someone who understood that true power came from choosing your own path, that real strength was built on honesty, and that the best revenge was becoming so powerful that betrayal could never touch you again. Evelyn Carter had been invisible, overlooked, underestimated. Evelyn Carter Salazar was a force to be reckoned with, a queen who'd claimed her throne and would defend it with everything she had. And she was just getting started.